So this is one of the cars that we're here to see, the BMW M135i. Obviously the base model has front wheel drive, this one being an X-Drive with four wheel drive. And we have a couple of nice little features. These 19-inch lightweight wheels with what they call compound brakes, as well as 4-piston calipers. The power itself comes from a 2-litre turbo, 4-cylinder engine, putting out about 300 horsepower, which is about right for this segment. And we also get real tailpipes. Interesting styling cues include this kind of Hofmeister kink in the back with the number 1 here to note that it's a 1 series. And on the inside, of course, with this being the M135i, we get stuff like the 12 o'clock marker, the blue stitching here on the steering wheel, as well as the M Performance seats. You also get these paddles for shifting up and down for all of the pops and bangs you could ever want. And of course, there is a massive screen that goes the whole way across. As with most cars nowadays, they are automatic only, so you get this, well, this little toggle here to shift from drive to sport, neutral and reverse. And from what they've said, they've tried to go very minimalist with the interior, although it feels quite samey when it comes to stuff like the BMW i5 that I was recently in. I will say, not the biggest fan of these plastic little structures here on the bottom of the steering wheel. And part of that is because, from what I've seen, the actual standard 1 series is only a 2-spoke steering wheel. The vents themselves are kind of hidden. These essentially are the vents and the controls are down here for them. And of course, a seemingly frameless mirror, even though the actual bezel goes out to about here. Under the bonnet, you do get, of course, a 2-litre turbo engine, putting out about 300 horsepower and 450 newton meters of torque. Sounds a bit like this. But I think it's time to take this car on the road and see what it's like. So we've had a chance to take the M135i for a bit of a spin. This day is also in relation to the 120i, so like the base model, and then also obviously the X3. This is the one I'm interested in, as well as actually some of the higher power X3s, because this is essentially the competitor to the likes of the Golf R, and it's a segment that's been around for, I want to say, probably about 15 years at this stage. And that's this kind of like quick 4-wheel drive, turbocharged hot hatch. Now, personally, I'll always choose like a GTI over a Golf R, but obviously in the BMW lineup, you don't really have that. So you have the rear-wheel drive stuff, or you have the high performance 4-wheel drive stuff. You don't actually have a high performance front wheel drive car. Part of that goes back to BMW's legacy, and obviously there'd be so many enthusiasts who are like, oh, I don't, like, why would anyone want a front wheel drive performance car? I think it could be kind of cool, like having this engine with just a front wheel drive layout to compete with the GTI instead, but that's just me. But here we are in the M135i, and let's pop it into sport mode on this lovely screen. Oh, we got a couple of more pops and bangs. It's nice. It's just a little sedate so far, but we'll see how we feel. I'm going to take this for a drive for probably about 15-20 minutes and see how we get on. If you do mash the accelerator from, let's say, 50, it takes a little bit of time, but it does move. And it does make quite a few pops and bangs, which a certain clientele will be really happy with. Well, the type of clientele that likes attention. Oh, and like, it is well able to go. It's enjoyable, it's a fun car. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm not really that sure about this category of car. I kind of sometimes struggle with this category of car as well, because I'm like, they're really grippy. And this one is really grippy, has loads of power, and it's just really well capable. It's a really good, capable car. I don't like that rev hang though. Not the biggest fan of the gear shifts in this, to be honest with you. They take a second, and maybe that's just because I've been spoilt by like Golf Rs and S3s that all have their dual clutch gearbox. I thought this might have a dual clutch gearbox, but it just feels like it hangs. It's a bit. The gearbox is like, yes, we will change the gear for you, but we have to go through the bureaucracy and 3 levels of approval. And we finish work at 5, and we are not back in tomorrow until 10 o'clock in the morning. It's like, down, come on. Thank you. But I think you kind of forget about that, and it makes up for it when you mash the throttle again. And then it does that, where you're stuck in M, and most other brands would be like, oh yes, well, you've reached the rev limit in M, so therefore we are going to shift automatically to the next gear. No, not this. This is just like, no more power. You wanted M, you got the M. Like, oh, you wanted M? So we gave you M, and then you did that? And what are we meant to do now? We are stuck in M. You wanted M. I'm kind of like, oh, just not necessary. Like, why are we in drive? I know we're in sport mode. I struggle with that a little bit. Yeah, and the reason I don't like that is because it just feels like you're labouring the engine. Like, what if I like driving around in sport mode? What if I like all the pops and bangs, but I just want to get to work? Oh, right, so at 5,000 RPM, at sitting at 60 kilometers an hour, we'll finally change down or change up a gear. But we're still stuck at 3,000 RPM doing 60 kilometers per hour, and I haven't accelerated in probably 40 seconds or so. Yeah, the one thing is they do handle great because they have buckets and buckets of grip, buckets of traction. I wish we got a chance to try this out on track. If you've ever spent time in Germany, you'll know that like a lot of the roads, they're just very safe. Like, you'll never get much like, yeah, they're just very safe. All of them are.